Tears turn to laughter, that child long ago. My soul starts to linger, it's home I know. If you catch me daydreaming now and forever, thoughts are carrying me along to that place we call home. Down that long road, throughout life we roam.
Lying between the Gaspé Peninsula of Quebec and northern New Brunswick is the largest bay on the Gulf of St. Lawrence. When Jacques Cartier sailed in here in July of 1534, he found that the climate here was considerably more agreeable, warmer, in fact, than it was in adjacent areas of the Gulf, and so he gave it its name, the Bay of Chaleurs. We're here to explore the Quebec coastline of this region, its towns, its villages, its multiple facets. Here where some of the best salmon rivers in the world spill down from spectacular mountains, cultures and languages combine in a story that is as unusual as the place itself. So come on aboard. We'll take you back to the beginning of time, and we'll tell you why this place is talked about in circles around the world. A host of components make up this place. Some are easy to define, some not. Fishing at daybreak, a railway along the coastline, are part of the picture. Yet the picture is as original as the setting. It's like the 30s music of La Bolduc.
J'aime ma bateau marcher le lundi pour acheter des têtes. Des têtes, des feuilles, des petites têtes, sortes de têtes, encore des têtes, manque des têtes, des têtes, toujours des têtes, talons des têtes. J'aimerais ma nuit, j'aimerais des jours à piquer, j'aime ma bateau marcher le mardi.
In trying to put a handle on the mystique, so called, of the Gaspé. It's topography, it's a combination of the sea and the mountains, the beauty of spring and fall here in the Gaspé. It's something physical. It's, I'm not a poet, but people writing about the Gaspé have expressed this sort of thing in ways that I really envy.
Coming home to the Baie de Chaleurs for historian Ken Annett is returning to a place where the soul has never left. Salmon, and the river that runs through the life of Bud Campbell.
I don't care where you go, and you say Cascapedia and the guy's ears come to a point, I'll give you 10 to 1 he's a fisherman. It's a Micmac name, and you'll hear many translations of it. I've always heard that it was fast-flowing water.
Mountains, rivers, and sea have dominated settlement here. Yet these same features have come to mean deliverance for people like Valerie Gilker.
I would feel quite badly, actually, for the people that lives in the city and in or the urban areas. And I find it very frustrating, even today, to go back and to the city and just stoplights, for instance. I find them so frustrating. You're constantly constrained. You have to stop when you want to go fast. And it's a great freedom that I think you sense living in this kind of vastness, sort of. And there's also the security of knowing almost everybody.
Spanning an outer and inner basin, the Baie de Chaleurs shoreline has evolved over a millennia. At Miguasha, where the Restigouche River enters the bay, fossils present a complex puzzle that Marius Arsenault and his colleagues strive to piece together.
among all the rock that we know on the earth, Miguasha represents something that is, unique. Is that how a fish start to modify, transform itself to become an amphibian-like or an animal that can walk, a tetrapod, four-leg, and walk on the surface of the earth. The only place where paleontologists have examples and can understand how this transition was made is Miguasha.
Nouvelle, Carleton, New Richmond, Bonaventure, New Carlisle, Pesbeviac. Whistle stops along the coastline. Place names that share a history.
Gaspé itself is an Indian word and generally thought to mean much the same as Finistère means in France, in Brittany, Land's End, and is linked to the legends and so on of the Micmac people.
The region is part of the ancestral home of the Micmac First Nation of Eastern Canada. Micmac is a name believed to be derived from Nicmag, my kin friends, used by the 17th century French as a greeting for the tribe. Among the first people to be affected by activities in the New World, today, as they rebuild their society at communities like Mariah, contemporary and traditional ideals coexist. Despite some differences, the blend of the region's cultures remains as a contributing force.
Jules Bélanger of Gaspé, who is one of the moving spirits behind the Historical Society in Gaspé, and used the phone books as an illustration of where there were pockets of Irish, for instance, in the Baie area. It's around the Pesbeviac area because of the fishing. We got a number of Basque names like de la Roseby and Castiu. If you look at the directory here in New Richmond, you will see names like Pritchard and Dimmock. There is a certain reflection of the origin of peoples in lists like phone lists or election lists or things of this kind.
My roots go back 5 generations. Came here from Prince Edward Island. They started a business in New Richmond, expanded to a branch store in Cascapedia. We ended up supplying all the private camps on the river, which was a lucrative business, the only thing that kept us going. This is where then I got very interested in the conservation of salmon and in the working of the river, because the river was the mainstay of the community. It wasn't only mine. Everybody made their living off the river.
The territory is in transition today, moving from a resource-based economy, fishing, lumbering, agriculture, to tourism, service, and administration. Amidst this tapestry-like society, adaptability has always been key.
What really appealed to me as a child, I think, was getting a chance to travel just to each different village. And with my dad being in construction, we often had to go for supplies or for pieces of machinery to different villages that I would never see. Ordinarily, they weren't along the main highway, for instance. And each village had its own particular character. And just within a short distance, also, there would be an Anglophone village, and then there would be a Francophone village. Some of them would have Indian names, which were quite intriguing also. And I enjoyed that a great deal, the diversity.
It was about a century ago that international headlines describing an unprecedented fossil find put Miguasha on the map. The find remains unchallenged.
Well, the site was discovered by a geologist named Abraham Gesner. He was working at the time for the Geological Survey of New Brunswick. And of course, right across the river, the town of Dalhousie, he saw the rocks, and he was probably attracted by the red rocks that we have. He was trying to find probably coal, because as you know, Abraham Gesner was a medical doctor. He was the man that has created or invented kerosene. So I assume that he was interested mostly in trying to find coal deposit in Gaspé. And it's funny because he thought at the time that he had discovered the ancestor of the turtle, a reptile, which of course now we know that it's a fish. 30 years later, a geologist from the Geological Survey of Canada came to map the geology of the whole Gaspé area, and they came to Miguasha, and then they found some fossils of plants and fishes. Miguasha and the Quebec in North America did not always occupy the same place where we are on the planet. We were much souther. We were close to the equator. And Miguasha is a good example of that, you understand.
We think that probably the Basque people, fishermen from the seaports down in the corner of Spain and France, were here probably before, in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, probably before Columbus came to America. They probably had fishing stations along the beaches of the Baie Chaleurs well before Jacques Cartier came to America.
Within such a short distance, we have such a wealth of things to do, and it's all, you don't need a season's ticket, or you don't need to spend any money to speak of, other than maybe a bit of gas sometimes to get there. Within 20 miles, you can be on the top of what is tundra. You can be on a world-famous salmon river. You can be walking along the beautiful cliffs that really are inspiring. That I really appreciate it, and I would miss tremendously if I had to leave again.
The mainstay of the golden years in the Baie des Chaleurs, the catalyst that drew a mosaic of peoples to these shores, became its currency, cod, la morue.
Moi, je m'appelle la petite Marie. Je suis née d'enfant de la Gaspésie. C'est du poisson, je vous dis que j'en ai mangé. Et qu'il m'en a resté des arrêts d'un gosier. De la morue qui est en lutte puis du hareng. Des beaux petits goûts, du flottant, des manigots. S'il y en a parmi vous qui aiment ça, descendez à Gaspé, vous allez en manger.
In 1764, there were two very significant things happened here in the Baie Chaleurs. One was the arrival from Jersey on the little brig Seaflower of a man called Charles Robin. He represented Jersey merchants who were very interested in the potential of the Baie Chaleurs as a base for the fishery. Baie was the great fishing capital, really, of the Robin Empire, the shipbuilding center for the Robins, the export center for goods going overseas, all over the world. He purchased his goods in Jersey. He hired fishermen. He supplied them with fishery needs and with their food and so on. And in turn, they were obliged to bring their fish to him. Young French-Canadian men from what we call the upper parishes, up the St. Lawrence, from Kamouraska, Bellechasse even, they would come here to fish for robin on some contract basis. Before too long, these people decided that they would stay. So around the summer fishing beaches, you got the beginnings of communities.
From Percé to Restigouche, boatloads of Gaspé cure salt cod bound for Spain, Italy, and the West Indies brought fortunes to some, a living to others. Through the centuries, as the living became tougher, generations left for the cities. But for most, the sea remained never far away.
Whenever I was away, whether it was Quebec or Montreal or New Brunswick, I would have to live somewhere near the water. That was one criterion that I couldn't overlook. And whether it was just the back river, what we call in Montreal, or the St. Lawrence in Quebec City, I had to live within a very short distance of that body of water. Everyone that grows up here, through high school and so forth, you're conditioned. You know you have to go away from your earliest memories. You recall having to leave, and you're prepared for it to some extent. But it's heart-wrenching. I would feel very badly. It just always happened that the sun was shining on the bay in those days, and I would wait to catch the train, and I would think, oh, will I ever have a chance to come back here and live again and choose the kind of career that would permit me to do that.
The fossils indicate, of course, being fish, they tell us that we have a water environment. So, as I said, in those days, trying to establish the right environment for those fish is not an easy task, because, first of all, we have to define were they living in brackish water, fresh water, or salted water, let's say marine environment. So on that, I think that we'll never probably know the answer. I don't think we will be able to know. But we're working, trying to understand that, because, as I said, Miguasha being a very important heritage for scientists, the more lesson that we know from Miguasha, well, it helps to comprehend that famous transition, which is a bit studying our own evolution.
Il était bien grand, il mesurait 7 pieds. Il avait la tête comme une brosse à plancher. Ça, c'était du monde, parlez-moi donc ça. Je le faisais dans...
Depleted stocks have left a bygone era for many communities. However, fish is a theme that remains embedded in the culture. Whether you see it expressed in tanned fish leathers for the fashion industry, or a carved trophy salmon of the Restigouche, Bonaventure, or the Cascapedia, it's forever there.
The king of the fishes, salmon. It's the ultimate sport in angling, you know. A friend of mine once told me, no sport excels above salmon fishing, because every time is like the first time. The salmon is an anadromous fish that lives in salt water and only comes into fresh water to spawn. They live in the gravel, and they're buried in gravel. These fish, before they spawn, they dig quite a trench. It could be anywhere from 1 foot to 2 feet deep. And then they spawn into it, and they roll huge rocks back in. And they'll stay within 100 yards of where they were born the first year. Then if they go to sea, which they will, they migrate to sea, and have to go through quite a transition, you know, from fresh water to salt water. If they stay out a year, they can come back as a 10-pound fish. If they stay out 2 years, they'll come back as a 20 or 30-pound fish. And if they stay out 3 years, they'll come back as a 30-plus. There's several theories on this, and their feeding ground is off Greenland in the Davis Straits.
Through the centuries, the people of the Gaspé have owed their living to the mountains, rivers, and sea, a geography that remains dominant, unchanged. History has also created a bond among the population that is fixed. The First Nation people of Maria and Restigouche, the descendants of the Basque, Jerseyite, the people from France, and the various regions of French Canada, Quebec, and Acadia, and those who fled the U.S., pledging allegiance to Great Britain. For all of these, the Gaspé, Land's End, is their refuge, their home.
The period immediately before and during the American Revolutionary War is a period that saw great stresses here in the Baie Chaleurs. Privateers from the American seaports, Boston, Gloucester, and so on, prowled the coasts here for years during the war. Life wasn't safe. Robin lost ships. Percy was sacked. When the French established themselves in the Maritimes, and they established places like Louisbourg and so on, history tells us that the Americans came up and tried to take Port Royal, and they tried to take Louisbourg. And there was a resentment which was general in the population. And they armed their ships. Really, it was a sort of a commercial venture on one hand and a reprisal venture on the other. Many loyalists, or royalists as they were called in the United States, fled across the line into Canada.
You can come across a Gaspésian in Vancouver or in northern Quebec, and they're always, whether they be French or English or Indian origin or whatever, they're always pleased to see you. It's always this sort of bonding that goes on. I try to explain it perhaps by the hardships we've known that our ancestors knew, the difficulties in growing up here that they had to face to stick it out here.
Well, you have to love the river to start with. And I was born with the love of this river. As a kid, I was out there with a piece of alder and a string on it trying to get fish. Every little brook, I was fishing. I can remember my first salmon. I went through this roof. There's nothing. I like better than getting out there on a Sunday morning and with a pair of waders on, away from the highway, away from civilization altogether, nothing but the birds and the bees and the may see an animal. And to be out there, whether I catch a fish, take it or leave it, I'm there to catch them. If I don't, I still had a thoroughly enjoyable time.
When I come back to the Gaspé, I like to think that there has been a unique will here to live and let live among the people. It may be that Gaspésians have never known tremendous prosperity, such as some people have. And between all the various components of the Gaspésian society, you'll find a great desire to be good neighbors.
Mountains, rivers, and sea. A region, a history, a people. This is the world of the Quebec coastline, of the Baie de Chaleurs.